So who is IXL? IXL is an artist that just tries to, I guess, bring words to life. And where am I from? A lot of people wanted that. So I grew up in New York City, Southside Jamaica, Queens, as you can see, like what it says on the shirt. With that, shout out to Ryan Appleware. Anyway, growing up in New York was definitely unique because especially in the era that I grew up, I'm an 80s baby, so the era that I grew up growing up in New York was definitely unique. I was open, or I was exposed to a lot, especially going through Queens, Brooklyn, Harlem, all those areas. Everybody knows city never sleeps, and it really doesn't. Had a unique opportunity to actually go to school abroad, right? So I have family that's from the Caribbean, and my father's side of the family lived in England, so I did a little bit of school out there. So I do also have to give a shout out to the 0121 because that also makes up a lot of my influences. So a lot of people ask, why do I do music? And my answer to that is simple. It's my release. I just try to put all of my experiences, everything that I've gone through, everything that I've been through, into words and tell stories. My goal is always just if I can help somebody in any way. If I help one person, right? If I put a message out that reaches one person, then, I've accomplished my mission. Because helping that one person is that one change that I wanted, right? Making the world a better place one person at a time, or allowing somebody to become better, whether it's something that I've said or something that I've done. That's really, my main focus and my main goal. So I started writing probably when I was, I want to say 12. I want to say I was 12, right? So this is a point in my life where I wasn't living with my mother or my sister. I grew up with my older sister mainly, and then I kind of left and was living with my father's side of the family. And it was stressful because it was a complete new environment, complete new everything for me. And so I was talking to my sister, and I was like, on the phone one day, and I was asking her, like, I was telling her what was going on. She was asking me how everything was. And I was telling her how, I wasn't quite getting it, and it was a lot of emotions that I was dealing with and didn't know how to kind of express it. She's a poet. She, wrote a lot of poetry, and she was like, hey, just write it down on paper, just put your words and your feelings on paper and see if that makes you feel better. And that's really where it started. So I got a book and I just started writing how I felt, and obviously being so young, it started off with just words being put on a paper, right? So it didn't really have any kind of structure to it. It was just, if I was angry and I would write that I was mad, I was mad because my dad didn't let me go outside and play or something, you know what I'm saying? Like, I would just write it down. And then essentially it just grew from there. It just, writing down words wasn't helping. So I was like, all right, let me make these words on this paper make sense. Let me tell this story, and then maybe if somebody reads it or somebody's hear it, they'll understand my story. Because if I just write words down and then somebody sees it or whatever, it doesn't make sense to anybody. So I was like, I needed to make it make sense. And that kind of started because she wanted to hear something. She was like, let me hear what you wrote. And I was like, all right, well, this. And she was like, okay, well, what is that saying? And I guess it was that question there that kind of cultivated how I grew. Because then I understood that I couldn't just write words on a paper. I had to write words that make sense and tell stories. So that's how I guess I became a storyteller. A lot of my influences comes from my heritage, right? So I don't consider it rap, I consider it hip hop. But I grew up listening to a lot of reggae music. So if you know about reggae music, you know about the roots and culture, you know, everything has a, has a meaning. There's a story for everything. Everybody's always telling a story, from Gregory Isaac and his Night Nurse to listening to dancehall now, and you listen to Romain Virgo. I mean, I grew, that's a new era. I went from old school to new school, but listening to that type of music and hearing the stories being told kind of made me now want to tell stories in my music. And so that's what I do. I try to put messages out there to where people can probably, reach something. All right, so why the name, I guess, would be the next question. Why the name IXL? So for everybody that knows me, they've known that I've gone through a plethora of names in my life, I guess. Especially with all the traveling and places that I've been. When I was in the UK, they used to call me Yankee. Like that was my name. Growing up, kind of, it was straight Yankee. Everybody, Yankee, 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 because I was, the American guy. So that's kind of unique, and that kind of stuck with me being over there. But then when I came back to New York, it's like, how am I gonna be in New York and then call myself Yankee? It kind of didn't really, make sense. So that's kind of when I went through, a long list of names. One of them being Mr. I used to call myself Mr. because I came back and I remember I like to watch old school movies sometimes, and I watched The Color Purple. And I remember the time when Celie was in the kitchen, and then they was spelling words, and then she was like, oh, and Mr. popped up behind the window, and she was like, M-I-S-T-E-R, Mr. So I was like, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna call myself Mr. I guess it's not a good reference because he was a complete, not a good guy. But I like the name, so I just went Mr. and I spelled it, the same way. And then I went to, I think I had Just was another name. I had to kind of realize that my name had to represent me, and Mr. kind of was just generic and really didn't represent me. So I was like, Just was the next name that I went through, and I had that name for a little bit. But that name, it didn't really stick. It didn't really rock too well. So later on, I ended up going by IXL because, it was one of the guy I used to do music with was asking like, all right, so who are you? Like, if you want people to say a name and understand who you are, what do you want them to say? One word. And I was like, man, I guess, I'm always putting 100% in everything that I do. And it always, has a positive impact. And you know what? I'm excelling at everything that I do. So I was like, you know what? I excel. And then I can flip it, right? So if you see it, you see the I, the X, and the L, which is essentially short for I excel. But again, when you say it, it's the same thing. So that's the name that I've stuck with, and that's the name that I'm gonna have for eons, for eternity or whatever. But I excel because I excel. So in me doing music, I kind of started off with how it kind of started. It kind of shifted, obviously, hip hop essentially is poetry in motion. So it started off with poetry, and then obviously, depending on how you spin it, you can, turn it into, hip hop and make songs out of it. So I think I was in school again. I was probably like maybe 13, 14, and I was playing, I was playing the saxophone or the trumpet. I think I was playing the trumpet at the time. But either way, so it was in this music class, and then a few of my friends, they got into like producing music, and this was back in the day. I'm not even gonna date myself, so I'm not saying the year, but they was doing music, and we were like, yo, we're gonna do a song for the school. We're gonna showcase this song, and they was like, hey, you from New York? You do music, right? Come on in, right? Let's rap. And I was like, okay, cool. Let's try it. And I remember the first verse kind of that I ever wrote made no sense, but it was like my because it was good. It was good, especially being so young. It was different from what everybody else was kind of doing. And it goes, I don't remember all of it, but it goes like this. All right. Don't laugh. Well, you're probably gonna laugh because I laugh every time I do it. But anyway, it goes 55 4445. What you gonna do when you see me alive? They after me, the master me, try to catch me. Big batch of 3, I take them all along, play ping pong with the heads. All right, never mind. Anyway, but that's it. So it goes like that. That was like the first verse I ever wrote to a song. We put it on a song, and everybody kind of loved it. So I started writing. And then growing up, and when I came back over to the US and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna keep on, doing music, it was obviously different because, in New York, everybody does music, everybody raps. I mean, in the US, everybody raps. So what I realized was that I like working with kids a lot, right? So I realized that people started to gravitate towards me and wanted to learn. Why, I don't know, but they kind of started to gravitate and wanted to learn. And so I realized that words have an impact. And so that was my, you know what, I can change the world with the words that I use. There's this old saying that I don't know why we recycle sayings, because some of them don't make sense. And it was something that somebody said and everybody just keeps on using it. But there's a saying that I don't agree with, right? It goes, sticks and stones can break bones, but words can't hurt me, right? I don't agree with that. Words themselves, right, they can't, they're harmless, right? They cannot hurt you. But the way you use those words can change somebody's life, right? So my saying is, sticks and stones can break bones, but words can change a life. Because when we think about things, people that are going through stuff, whether it's depression, PTSD, whatever they're suffering from, the words that are being told to them by, it could be that one person that makes a difference in their life. The words that are being told to them can be that driving factor to why they commit suicide, or why they turn to taking drugs, or why they decide to do something that's detrimental to their life. So when I kind of had that aha moment and realized that people gravitated towards me and kind of listened to the words that I would say, I decided at that point in time that I needed to use my words to have a positive impact on society. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of the things that you see that's happening in the world now, people may or may not agree, but I feel like music has a big thing to do with it. Music helps that person become who they are. You know what I mean? So if you're listening to the words that are telling you to do craziness and whatever in your mind, you may not think it at the time, but in your subconscious, it's affecting you. And so when I kind of, got that whole grasp on reality, I was like, you know what? I want to use my words to have positive impact. So now I just tell my stories the way I tell my stories. So when we talk about music, and we talk about how I've been writing since 13, and then obviously it grew to doing music more, when I got a little older. But I've been into making songs for years. It gotta be at least 15 years I've been making songs. Like good songs. Well, songs that some people would consider good. I've realized, and everybody knows, everybody that's in the entertainment, right, industry it's hard. It's hard to get in there, it's hard to break in. It's extremely hard. I've doubted myself. I still doubt myself now with a lot of things that I do, but I'm kind of getting to the point now where I'm okay with what I do, because I've always said, no matter what, I'm always gonna do music. Whether one person hears it, whether 50 people hear it, whether 1 million people hear it, or whether nobody hears it. I'm still gonna do music because it's my release, right? So I do music to try to reach people, but it's helping me to release at the same time. The goal is to reach a person, right? But at the same time, the ultimate goal is for me to remain sane, remain calm, and be one with the world, right? Remain at peace. So I do that to tell my stories and hope that my stories can affect somebody in a positive way. When I went to San Diego, I was living in San Diego for a while. And when I was living in San Diego, it was when I started, getting real big into performances. I actually first started performing out here in Virginia. Shout out to Baby Girl E. But anyway, I started performing here in Virginia. And then I went out to San Diego and got on the scene heavy. I was, being asked to show up to shows, doing all kinds of open mics. But I realized that in San Diego it was kind of cutthroat, right? Because not the whole East Coast, West Coast thing, but if you weren't from San Diego, people weren't really loyal to you. So I would get on stage and I'll perform and I see people bopping their heads, they would love it. And then there would be no action from it though. You know what I mean? Like they would love it, they would talk, boom, 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 you know, but them wanting to be loyal to you and be like, yo, yeah, that's the next one. I'm gonna follow this guy. They just didn't do that because you're not from their city kind of thing. And maybe it's not like that now. I'm talking about this was years ago. So shout out to San Diego. I'm not, you know, talking about y'all in a negative way. I'm just saying that was one of the influences that kind of pushed me away from music because I realized I was doing so much. I was getting so much love, but nothing was coming from it. It was just like, all right, cool. We're going to get this guy because he's going to rock the crowd. And then when we get our local artists up next, the crowd's already ready to rock. And, you know, I just felt like I was being used, even though it was still my release. You know what I mean? I still just felt like I was being used. So I kind of, you know, stepped away for a little bit. And then, you know, I've been back and forth several times. I'm back in it now, probably harder than I've ever been because of, you know, a good friend of mine, shout out to Mick the Don. He kind of pulled me back out. He was there when I was just, he actually came to San Diego like after I'd been there for a little bit and then, you know, heard some of the music and was like, you know, cool. And kind of helped me grow, kind of helped me to elevate. It was like, man, like let's try doing, you know, different things. And I was very reluctant to doing different things. Like I didn't want to go and do what they were doing. I didn't want to go and do what they were doing because I wanted to be myself. You know, that mentality kind of kept me stagnant. It didn't allow me to grow. So I finally started to step out of the box and then kind of, you know, tapped into a new level of where I consider myself to be. So now I'll step out of the box a lot more now, but I still have to have my message. But I've been in and out so much, and I think I realize now that a lot more people have started hearing, you know, or have heard my music, and I've gotten positive feedback. Now I'm more into, you know what, I'm gonna do this.